Welcome to Informed by Alan Roebke, this October 5th, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It appears that Kavanaugh is going to move up the ladder and become our next Supreme Court Justice, but you listening to this on Sunday will know for sure, but I think it's going to happen, and I hope and pray it happens, because he's the right man for the job, in my view. So we're going to talk about Kavanaugh, and we're going to talk about the Kavanaugh argument here, or process, under two names, and we're going to combine those two names like the dictionary does. In one, we're going to look at Kavanaugh as Evan, E-V-A-N, and a personality or influence that he had in his life, and I think I had in my previous life before I took on the world and lost big time. And we're going to look at the other side of this argument by looking at what was really at stake, genitals. And we're going to combine those two words into a term in a dictionary, so you don't have to turn off the radio, you don't have to cover the kids' ears. Everything's up and up here. And we're going to talk about the evangelicals, not the evangelical, you know what I'm talking about, the church process, but the evangelicals. And we'll give you some thoughts on the terminology and what took place, both as the name Evan and genital combined. And I think that's really what happened, at least in the latter stage of this whole process, what he came in as and what he was saved by his chinny chin, so to speak. And the other thing, we're going to give you an assignment, you good folks in New Ulm and the Hanska area. We're going to want you to go to Pioneer Public TV and listen to the debate that's posted there, if you missed it on Thursday night, on Torkelson and Kimmel, I think it is. And I'm going to give you the question that I presented to Pioneer Public TV that I don't think asked, but I'm going to rephrase it and ask it to all of the rest of their debates that they have. And then I'm going to tell you a little about a 4.5-hour interview that I was drilled or asked or commented on by Forum Communications in Fargo, basically with a reporter from Ag Week. And my experience is 4.5-hour interviews, they end up carrying nothing of it, but just a little thought on what they asked me. I think you'll find it interesting and gives me something to scratch my head about as well, and not ramble, but to educate you of what's happening behind the scenes that the media outlets don't want you to listen to or don't think is important. And the other thing, we're going to talk a little bit about the president's trip to Iowa on the 9th, where he's going to talk about E15, and my conversations this week with the chief economist of the USDA on trying to influence him to see that Perdue, our Secretary of Ag, or Trump himself looks at the Roebke plan and presents that as an alternative to the E15 announcement he's going to do, where all my sources that I checked with, industry sources, said, well, he's going to announce it, and then we got it takes so many days, and there's a public comment period, and that's when the lawsuits will stop and start, I should say, and we'll tie it up. So the Roebke plan just works wham bam, thank you ma'am, as always, and go from there. But first and foremost, I want to talk to you about the Torkelson and Kimmel debate that was on Pioneer Public TV, and the question I asked, and we're just going to talk short about it because we've talked about charities before, but in Minnesota, outstate Minnesota, a lot of conservative people, both Republicans and Democrats, and always talking about taxation. So here's what the question I sent to your two candidates down in the Hanska, New Ulm area. And my question was to them was, how do you stand on taxation of Minnesota gaming charities? In other words, pull tabs. Charities like the VFW clubs, Eagles, Elks, Lions, snowmobile clubs, etc., that in 2017 paid the state of Minnesota over $63 million in state income taxes on net profits of $138 million. They paid $63 million in state income tax on profit listed by the Minnesota Gambling Control Board at $138 million. And with 26 million of these tax dollars used to pay off U.S. bank stadium bonds, making it a 46% income tax rate for Minnesota's non-profit charities, while Minnesota's top income tax rate for our richest citizens and corporations are taxed at just 9.8%. And don't get me wrong, I think this unrelated business of these charities, so they have some real money to do a meaningful mission in their communities, they should be taxed, but only at 9.8%. And there's a bracket for this called unrelated business income. And so what I want you to do is call Tollefson, Kimmel, and ask him about this. And any of you others that are listening far away, because I know in some areas the KNUJ signal reaches way out and even into Iowa, and ask any Minnesota House member that's up for election, how can that be? And unfortunately, I think Tollefson will tell you, well, Roebke doesn't know what he's talking about, and he never knows what he's talking about. He's not Yvonne, never was Yvonne. And we don't tax on net profits. We tax on net receipts. And see, by taxing on net receipts, all these incumbent House members all across the state can get by with saying, oh, well, it's only a 23% tax and it's on gambling. But at the same time, Tollefson and the rest of them, Republican and Democrat, don't want to talk about the fact that they don't tax horse racing in Minnesota. They don't tax the Native American gaming and so on. And so let's just put real facts and do the same of call or email at issue and a good question and a reality check for Kessler and so on down the line at KARE 11, Tom Krollman and Fox 9 and whatever. Why isn't this an issue? And call your political party. Because this is an issue, people, that needs to be talked about front and center. We need to clear the house. That's what our forefathers did. When they do outrageous policies, they should go. And so that's the thought for you people in New Ulm, your local activities there. And then we're going to get into Kavanaugh a little bit. And we're going to get into Kavanaugh different from everybody else, all the political pundits and what you're going to hear on the news. And we're going to talk about evangelicals, not evangelical. You know what I'm trying to say, and the terminology gets me in. I belong to the ELC Lutheran Church. I'm furious about some of the things they do, but I just go there to commune. But anyway, the evangelical... I can't pronounce it. Sorry. You know what I'm saying. But anyway, let's look at this. Let's look at Kavanaugh. And I think in my previous life, I was looked at as the name Yvonne. And here's what some of the dictionary definitions of Yvonne, Kavanaugh in this case. Yvonne makes everything seem good, safe, hopeful, and happy when you hug him. Was always most sincere, lovable smile, laugh, the guy you can always call on, the most honest and caring person ever, the man who would ruin all other men for you, the most truly humble on earth. Just being around him makes you remember when the world was good. And just a little bit of clarity for you ladies out there. Another definition is one who is smart, intelligent, funny, amazing, and incredibly cute. I think that defines Kavanaugh. The guy all guys wanted to be, and listen to this, ladies, and all girls wanted, just like Ford, that was in this hearing process. He's honest, truthful, loyal, and just generally a good human being. If you have an Ivan in your life, don't let him go, ladies, is what it's really saying. He's the best person who will ever come into your life and will definitely make your life better. And so the term Ivan is the way we should look at Kavanaugh going forward. Yet at the same time, you know, in Minnesota here we talk about, and nationally talk about, the calming effect of prosecutor Amy Klobuchar when he asked her about her drinking activities. But he did a poor job, and why? Because he had always been a lawyer and a judge, or worked for a judge. He came into the arena just like I thought if I get my day in court, I could point out the billions and hundreds of billions of waste in ag policy and government, and foretold what was going to come in 2008 and 2009. But when he found himself in the being prosecuted, it was a new world for him. And all of a sudden, he didn't have any friends. All of a sudden, he was tainted. He was looked more as just a man with genitals. And that's why we're going to use the word evangelical. And we'll get to that, why we use that. And remember, I'm a Christian first and a good American. How do we address the mess the world is in? Well, we find as many Ivans in our society, both men and women, that can do the job for us. And that's why I said here, we need to modernize government. We need to modernize the State House, the legislature in Minnesota. We need to drop it to 99 members, 66 House members, and 33 Senate members, and get the best people we can. The present 201, we're not getting the quality people there that we need, and we're not getting the quality people to run for governor that we need either. But so in this process, that's what I want you to think about. That, and then we'll move on to the term. It's a legal. It's a dictionary term for we're not talking anything outrageous and breaking any FCC rules or anything like that. We just want you to give some insight on what really went on. Who was fighting to be the good guys in this process? A neck and neck race. And it's defined as evangelical, and they reference a Christian evangelist, I can't pronounce that name today, sorry, who is, get this, a church person, in other words, a Pharisees, another word, who is what? An evangelical, they define as one who is intolerant of differing beliefs, and both sides of our senators were showing that, and especially one who is loudly so, and therefore can be said to be acting like a dick, is what the definition of this dictionary of the word that I thought I was just going to be a slang term I came up with, but I thought, I must have heard it someplace. And then it goes on to say, what are evangelical people about? Now we're talking the members of this Senate Judiciary Committee and senators in general. And it says a local perspective and good old conservative German, Scandinavian country in southern Minnesota. I think all you people could relate to this. And it goes on to this. Thanks to the evangelicals, and that's what it says here, in my hometown, the liquor store was shut down, the porn store owner was run out of town, and the pharmacist was forced to stop carrying birth control. And so I think we can all relate to coming across to people like that. And So when we look at this hearing process, both sides, the Republican side that like to be evangelical, and the Democrats who like to say that anybody who loves somebody should be able to do it. Love somebody should be able to marry somebody. And men should make love to men if they want to, and women to women. And what the evangelical process talks about here is the Pharisees of both political parties at play here. And so what we're looking at here this day is we had a process that we're the good guys and you're the bad guys. And it's the struggle of mankind. And by the luck of the chinny chin chin, it looks like we're going to get Kavanaugh as our next Supreme Court justice. Yet at the same time, I don't think either side were biblical based in their arguments. Because the Bible makes it very clear that Republicans don't want to hear that God Almighty, when He created man, took a handful of dust and breathed air in it. It doesn't say that He took the sperm of the stallion and the egg of the swan and there was mankind. He said He breathed air into dust and there was man. And the Bible also talks about, and I blank on the passage, but lists a whole bunch of things that mankind does or needs to do. And one of them is there is a time to uproot. And when it comes to abortion, when there's major health issues involved, early stage abortion as a Christian is the right thing to do. Early stage abortion, when it relates to a fetus that will never become the apple of the eye of the parents or grandparents and will always be a burden on society. And with today's medical technology, people, we can find that out real early on. And for the most part, keep it in the hands of the family. Yet at the same time, the Democrats like to talk about if you love somebody, you should marry them. And we, church Democrats or church Republicans, we need to look at the fact of what does the Bible say about marriage? The Bible says that the son and the daughter should leave their parents and do what? Become one. Should become a family. They should come to the altar of the Lord and become one. And today we have just talked about love. We have one side saying morality is you're against abortion, and the other side says proper morality is let people express their genital needs. And what I'm saying in this hearing process, wasn't based on anything evangelical, wasn't a Bible-based deal. And I believe in separation of church and state, but it's something we all need to think about, whether you're on the Republican side or the Democratic side. And obviously we need to have debate on these issues, but it's just a thought process of we need good people, we need term limits. We had all these 80-year-old people sitting there, and we need to focus on modernizing our government. And that means we need to shrink the House in Washington down to about 200 members, and 50 or 100 senators. I guess I'd be content to say keep 100 senators, but in the case of House members, we should be about 200. And this whole process that was outrageous on many ways, yet necessary in a democracy, I don't think served either side well. And I think it scares the real Evans of our society from stepping forward to be involved in the government process and see me as a crucified man because I took undervalued grain to make a statement, and now still 20 years later, or basically, are trying to say the policy I wanted to change is still valid. And so that's what I want you to think about when you're discussing this whole process with your friends. A lot of this short-sightedness, but the biggest thing is we want to see the Evans of the world that everybody likes and respects, whether they're a different party, a different color, a different gender. We have to make room for those people. And in this process, boy, we barely made it. So think about that. Make sure you call Tollefson and your Republican parties and these people and ask, why is a 46% income tax rate based on net income of nonprofit charities about 4.5 times the highest rate for the richest people and the biggest corporations? So with that, that's a thought. But then I still got, 6 minutes left here. And I had this guy from Ag Week come that I don't think will do anything with it. But if he does, give you a little heads up and see how the process of asking me questions for 4.5 hours on camera, trying to talk about this Roebke plan. And I thought it was fascinating. Nice guy. He was in my little apartment here, and I'm telling you, I'm still hoarse from the process. How many of you have sat and answered questions and kind of did a This Is Your Life, the old program that was on? And I probably didn't do as good a job as I could have, because I wasn't expecting to be in the box next to the judge, and but that's what happened. And from my standpoint, it's probably good for me to get drilled and try to lay things out if I'm ever going to get back as an Evan or do things that are good for our society. As a felon, most of you say we have no business listening to a felon. But what if the felon has the solutions to our problem? What if the felon was willing to break the law to make a point, to force himself in to see that meaningful change comes about? And remember, you people on your way home from church, most of the key leaders, from John the Baptist to Christ himself to most of the, if not all of the disciples, really died as felons. They tried to send a message that we need to love our neighbor. We need to look out for all in our neighborhood, including charities that gamble. And we need to hold people accountable even though we think they're spotless. And so that's the process. And when I looked at that 4.5 hour interview, I would have liked to do it for about a 3-minute clip on why the Roebke plan works when we just had a farm bill that our congressmen and senators let expire. The 2014 Farm Bill. Let it expire. And it's important for anybody that lives in rural America. And yet it expired. And what did it do? It didn't do anything to stable prices. Because there's nothing in the 2014 Farm Bill or the 2018 Farm Bill that does what? Supports prices and reacts to the Chinese. Now, back to my interview, I told him I'm the only one that's talking about what the pundits should be talking about. The tariff fight back from China is what? To influence in elections. And I interviewed him on Wednesday, so he'd have this on tape on Wednesday, but now all of a sudden Pence and some others are saying, well, this is about influencing election. Well, it's about time. I've been thinking that or talking about that since it first came out. Why? Because China has to buy a massive amount of soybeans, And I don't think I have the sheet in front of me, but they only produce something like 15 million metric tons, and we produce about 127 million metric tons. And I think they consume about what we produce. The largest producers of soybeans in the world. We're kind of neck and neck with Brazil. But the reality is, why don't we have an ag leader or farm groups and say, well, Brazil, if you're going to sell it to the Chinese and you're the exclusive market, why don't you charge them $20 a bushel FOB Shanghai? At least make some money and pay off some of your debts, and or let us do it together, and you either share the market like we have, or they don't get any beans at all, and I think they'll come in line. But the biggest deal, the message I want to leave you today is what Pence is finally starting to say: don't look backwards at the Russian deal. Whatever has happened, happened. But the reality, let's look at what's going on right now. And one of the things I differed with this reporter, and he said, well, I don't see farmers mad at Trump. But that wasn't my point. Elections are won by slim margins. The Kavanaugh deal was a prime example. And when people are upset about this tariff deal, they tend to react. And the smallest minority that is just plain mad may vote in a way that does what? Does exactly what the Chinese want done. And I'm afraid that's going to happen. And I can't believe the Republicans and the president isn't focusing on that. And my Roebke plan that immediately supports soybeans with a 775 loan, immediately addresses ethanol for you guys in southern Minnesota with stock, of going to E11, which consumes another 500 million bushel of corn. You can be ideologists out there, you farmers and rural people, but E15 is going nowhere for years. The Roebke plan that goes to E11 consumes a bunch of corn right now, stabilizes markets, keeps taxpayer costs down to zero in the process, and yet I can only get on media if I pay $140 a week to talk to you people. Call your people at CTV there. Is why don't you let this guy talk to us on a regular basis? Because I have a lot to say that I believe as a good Christian you'll understand. It'll make the world a lot better place to live, whether you're Republican, Democrat, black or white, and so on. Thanks for listening. I'm Alan Roebke.